Chicago, February 1931. Just after the clock ticked past midnight, the snow kept falling steady and soft as 8 figures emerged from the train at Dearborn Station. Long coats cloaked their frames, shoes shined like mirrors, the brims of their identical black fedoras pulled low enough to erase their eyes. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their silence said everything. Capone had sent them. Their mission was deadly and clear: find a man named Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson, and make sure he didn't live to see the morning. Then send back something to prove it. The motive? That was no mystery either. Capone's liquor shipments, once moving effortlessly through Harlem, had started vanishing. Trucks disappeared like smoke. Drivers were found later alive, mouths wired shut, eyes haunted. The message: someone was interfering and no one was safe. Then came the real blow. A box arrived at one of Capone's side businesses in Cicero. Inside was a single bottle of Canadian whiskey, Capone's own product, and a copy of a Harlem newspaper. The front page, it praised Bumpy Johnson's dominance over the local numbers racket. No explanation, no name. Just that unsaid grin between the pages, daring Capone to read between the lines. Capone got the point, loud and clear. This wasn't business anymore, it was personal. Bumpy had crossed into his lane, so Capone sent something back, not wordsmen. By 12:40 a.m., those 8 men had scattered across Chicago's south side like pieces on a board. 2 cars, 4 men each. They came equipped with blueprints, floor numbers, addresses, and not much time to pull it off. Bumpy was rumored to have a meeting near State Street before heading uptown. If they failed to catch him tonight, it wouldn't just be a failed job, it would be a public embarrassment, the kind of crack in Capone's armor that other sharks would circle. At 12:57 a.m., one of them, Frankie Yale Jr., glanced at his watch, cigarette flickering at his lips. He was no one's favorite in the outfit, not even Capone's. But he was steady. 32, married, with a little girl back in Brooklyn fighting scarlet fever. He needed the cash badly. Not for luxuries, just to keep his daughter breathing. Frankie had no interest in Harlem politics. His mind wasn't on turf wars. It was stuck in hospital hallways filled with white coats and worse news. What mattered was the money promised if he made it back, enough to cover the latest bill and send something home. The plan? Clean and quick. Catch Bumpy at the bar on 35th. 2 cover the exits. 2 fire when he's cornered. 1 shot to the skull. Retrieve the hat. Capone wanted evidence, not rumors. That fedora was iconic. Bumpy's signature. Custom shape. Silk lining. Bring it back clean. Or bloody. Just bring it back. At 1:11 a.m., a slight whistle from the lookout. Then that's him. A tall silhouette cut through the pale streetlight. Big shoulders. Calm, deliberate gait. Fedora dipped just slightly right. It was Bumpy. The engines hummed as the cars crept. That's when everything split from plan. Bumpy didn't flinch. He didn't rush. As the headlights touched him, he stopped walking. He looked right into the windshield of the first car, eyes steady. He didn't reach for anything. He smiled, just barely, like he was the one expecting them. Then, cool as winter fog, he tipped his hat. The gunfire came next, sharp, loud, shattering the glass calm. Screams echoed. Bullets cut into brick and iron. But Bumpy? He'd already pivoted into an alley, swallowed by shadow before anyone could follow. 1 man was down, leg bleeding fast. Another fumbled his pistol into the freezing snow, and then silence. When the clock hit 1014, the street was bare, blood mixed with slush, empty shells scattered like dead promises, no hat, no body, just shaken men, realizing a grim truth. Bumpy Johnson hadn't been surprised. He knew they were coming. And if that was the case, then who warned him? Frankie Yale Jr. scrubbed blood from his fingers in the sink of a rundown boarding house. The old porcelain was chipped, and the water refused to drain. It swirled pink before spilling over the rim, dripping in quiet patterns to the floor. He stared at it like it could explain something. His leg wouldn't stop bouncing. Not from cold, from the thought gnawing away inside his chest. Bumpy had turned, not in confusion, but in expectation. That wasn't luck. That was planning. Frankie reached for a towel that reeked of bleach and old smoke, folded it corner over corner. He always folded things when he was scared. Order helped him think. In his pocket was a telegram, one he hadn't shown the crew. It had been waiting at the station when they arrived. Short. Fever back. Doctors want full payment before next round. His daughter was only 7. Too young to understand why her father boarded trains with dangerous men. Too young to know money could decide if she lived. Capone had made it simple. Finish the job. Get paid tonight. Pay the bill. Bring peace back home. But now, there was no body. No proof. Without that, there was no potty. Downstairs, muffled arguing broke through the thin apartment walls. The rest of the crew was unraveling fast. One swore Bumpy had a backdoor set up. Another became convinced they had a traitor. A third was already making plans to flee before sunrise. Frankie stayed upstairs, listening. Caruso, the unofficial leader of the group, paced like a man calculating his odds. Heavy-built, old school, the kind who'd survived other bad nights by conceding just enough when needed. He finally stopped and looked at Frankie. "You were closest," Lou said. "You saw his face." Frankie paused. That was the problem. He'd seen too much. He wasn't surprised, Frankie said quietly. Not even a little. The room went silent at the weight of it. Lou's voice lowered. "Then this ain't a hunt no more." Frankie caught the shift. A hunt means you chase the target. But now, the ground they stood on, it wasn't theirs anymore. Before dawn, they scattered. Hiding spots swapped. Old addresses burned. Frankie kept looking out windows, watching headlights crawl by, stomach tight enough to tear. Every noise outside felt like the beginning of something worse. At around 3:30 in the morning, a runner banged on the door. He looked winded, panicked enough that no one dismissed him. He brought a note left at one of their secret drop spots. It had no insult, no warning. Just an address, a time, and 6 words inked in tidy block letters, "Come collect the hat." The reaction was instant. Chaos, panic, rage. "It's a trap," someone yelled. "He's toying with us. We don't show. We walk away with nothing." But Frankie felt something else curl in his chest, a pressure that wasn't fear. It was hope, however desperate. If it was a trap, they'd die. If it wasn't, just maybe he could still earn the money. Just maybe she could breathe a little easier. He imagined Mary, his wife, arguing with another indifferent doctor. His daughter, small hands clutching blankets in a too-quiet hospital room. Frankie's jaw clenched. Lou noticed the look in his eyes. "You don't have to go," he said, and for a brief second it sounded like mercy. But it wasn't. Optional meant nothing in Capone's world. He tracked who stayed behind, who stepped up. Frankie stood. "I'm in." The address led them to a shuttered haberdashery near the river, windows covered with black paper, the door slightly ajar like it had been waiting for them. Too easy, too quiet. They went in, cautiously, pairs, guns drawn, no one talking louder than a whisper. Frankie stepped in second. The switch was already flipped, a soft hum as the shop's lights blinked on, tinting the space with a dim yellow glow. Hats lined the walls, dozens of them, every one of them black, every one identical to the kind Bumpy wore. Then their eyes dropped to the center of the room. A table, just one, and on it, arranged with unsettling precision, 8 fedoras laid out in a perfect line, all spotless, all untouched. Frankie's stomach turned. None of them were Bumpy's. Before anyone could process what they were seeing, the door behind them slammed with a sound too soft to scream danger, but final enough to collapse the room's air. The click of the lock chased its echo into stillness. Lou cursed, lunging for the door. Nothing. He twisted the handle, kicked hard. Dust rained down from the frame. Solid wood, not even a scratch. This place wasn't just closed, it was sealed. No windows opened, no stairs to escape. One man checked behind the counter, another lock, another dead end. All right, Lou muttered, forcing calm into his voice. Nobody panic. It's just theater. He's trying to rattle us. Frankie didn't move. His eyes were stuck on the table. These hats weren't tossed here. They were staged. Bent brims, sane creases. Somebody had studied their gear. Somebody had time. Lou, Frankie began, voice low. We shouldn't be here. Lou turned, annoyed. Little late for that. Then a voice slid from the back. Smooth, calm, not loud, not rushed. You came for proof? All guns went up immediately. From behind the racks stepped Bumpy Johnson. Hands out, coat open. No fedora. Same look on his face he'd worn under the streetlight, measured, knowing, utterly unbothered. No one fired. Not because they couldn't, but because he wasn't alone. From behind him, silhouettes emerged. Calm men. Composed. Already in position. They weren't reacting. They were waiting. They had planned this. Bumpy gestured casually toward the hats. I figured you'd like something familiar. Helps men think straight. Lou's lips twitched. You want to talk? Bumpy nodded once. I want to explain. One of Lou's guys let out a nervous laugh. Explain what? Why you didn't end up dead? Bumpy's eyes landed on him, cool and silent. The man stopped laughing. Explain why you're still breathing, Bumpy said evenly, and why that's a choice. Frankie's pulse thundered in his ears. His mind bowed toward panic. Instinct screaming at him to do something. Move, run, attack. But his body didn't budge. It understood something before his head did. Bumpy turned to study him. You, he said, you're different. Frankie's mouth dried out. I don't know you, Frankie croaked. That's right, Bumpy said, but I know you. He glanced down toward Frankie's coat pocket. Telegram, he said. Arrived late. Folded twice. Neat man. Frankie's hand flinched without rising. How could you? And I know, Bumpy went on, you didn't agree to this out of hate for me. You're here 'cause something worse has you scared. Lou shifted in place. This is getting personal. It already was, Bumpy replied sharply. 8 men sent instead of 1. That's personal. The room closed in even tighter. Guns remained raised, but now the tension wasn't aimed solely at Bumpy. The air between them all rippled with a new question. Who do we trust? Bumpy moved slowly to the table, picked up one of the hats, ran his fingers along its familiar bend. You were told to bring proof, he said. A message. He placed the hat back down. So I decided to send a different kind. Lou's jaw tensed. You really think Capone cares about dramatics? He'll care about what he doesn't hear, Bumpy said, meeting his eyes full on. Silence has a weight. Frankie felt it land in his chest. Silence meant no answers, no survivors. Bumpy's gaze drifted among the group. Here's the truth, he said. Every move you made, every name in your ranks, even the one you think no one knows, was expected. He turned back to Frankie. You can walk out, he said. The words felt like a gut punch. You, he repeated, voice calm, cold. Alone. Lou snapped around. What? Why him? Bumpy didn't look at him. Eyes locked on Frankie. Because someone in this room already traded your name, Bumpy said, and it wasn't you. Instinctively, the guns pulled tighter to grips, but now they weren't all pointed the same way. Frankie felt the ground shift too late. If he survived, it would mean choosing who didn't. No one moved. 8 guns, 8 lives, and a single sentence dangling between them like electric wire. Someone already sold you out. Lou jumped on it. That's a lie. He's just dividing us. Bumpy didn't flinch. He didn't argue. His hand moved slowly to his coat. Every weapon snapped louder in anticipation. But Bumpy didn't pull a gun. He set a folded sheet of paper on the table. Recognize this? He asked softly. Frankie did. Train schedules. Circled. Annotated. Lou's handwriting familiar and exact. Bumpy tapped the paper. That's how I knew your arrival time, where to intercept, which car you'd come in on. Lou's face blanched. That proves nothing, he snapped. I write things down. Bumpy nodded slowly. You also like getting paid twice. The room held its breath. Bumpy turned to face all of them now. Your boss sent you to fix a mess, he said, but Lou came here to cover his own. Lou backed up one trembling step. You don't know what you're talking about. But Bumpy kept going. Capone's trucks didn't start disappearing because I raided them. They vanished because he sold the routes, times, paths, names to me. Lou's hand dropped toward his coat. Frankie winced. But Bumpy didn't shoot. He leaned on words. Capone found out just enough to send you, he said coldly. Not to kill me, to clean house. You boys were never meant to go home. That line turned the room into a fire hazard. Weapons spun toward Lou. One man swore. Another stepped away from the group. Lou scrambled, barking orders. But Frankie saw it clearly now. Those 8 hats weren't for Bumpy. They were for the 8 men sent. Lou laughed, a brittle, bitter sound. You think Capone forgives betrayal? He spat. You think he forgives failure? Bumpy held his look. He doesn't have to. From behind the curtain, another man stepped forward. Older, tidy, no gun, polished tie. Frankie inhaled fast. He knew this one. Capone's accountant. One of Capone's shadows. The accountant looked at Lou. No malice, just resignation. It's over, he said. Your books are cooked. The accounts are locked. Lou's expression collapsed. You set me up. The accountant didn't reply. He didn't need to. Everyone saw it now. This wasn't a hit. It was a purge. Capone wanted a problem gone, and Bumpy turned it into a message wrapped in silence. Bumpy turned slightly toward Frankie as if calling time on the scene. You still want to leave? He asked, tone quiet but loaded. Frankie's lips parted. Images flared in his mind. His daughter's pale face, the beeping of machines, the debt breathing down Mary's neck like a threat. He couldn't afford to flinch now. Yes, he said. Bumpy nodded once. Then listen close. He leaned in, lowering his voice like a final instruction. You'll take something back. A pause, just not what they told you to. Frankie's breath caught. What? Bumpy straightened, loud enough for all to hear. Lou Caruso's dead, he said. He just doesn't know it yet. Lou jerked toward him. You can't, the accountant raised his hand. We can, he said. 2 of Bumpy's men moved in silently behind Lou, guns pressed to his back. Lou twisted, panicked, eyes wide. You're not going to let this happen, Lou said, locking eyes with Frankie. You owe me. Frankie hesitated. Everything held still. It all came barreling down to this moment. Loyalty versus survival. A comrade versus a child. Blood brotherhood versus a breathing daughter. His hand slipped into his coat pocket. Every eye in the room tightened. For one split second they all believed he was drawing his weapon. But no steel emerged. Just paper. Frankie pulled out the telegram, the one with his daughter's diagnosis scrawled across it like a verdict. He looked at Lou one last time. I'm sorry, he said. Lou opened his mouth to plead, but the gunshot cut him short, one pull, straight through. Lou collapsed to the ground, a heavy silence falling behind him. No screams, no scramble, just the simple absence of noise. Bumpy stepped forward and placed a fedora into Frankie's hands. Put this on, he said gently. Frankie did. It fit perfectly. Now came the final twist, one no one in Chicago saw coming. You'll go back, Bumpy said. Alone. You tell Capone the others bolted. Panic. Chaos. Lou snapped. You barely made it out. Frankie's lips trembled. Why would he even believe me? Bumpy allowed the dimmest smile. Because you'll bring him proof. He tilted his chin at the table. 8 hats. Still lined up. Frankie didn't need another word. Not bodies. Not blood. Just symbols. Only hats would return to Capone like trophies, like coffins. And as Frankie stepped toward the door, something cold slithered through his thoughts. Both sides believed he was theirs now. Would Capone keep a witness alive, or would surviving earn him a more subtle punishment? Frankie Yale Jr. stepped out into the softest side of morning. The snow had finally stopped, streets slick with shine, empty and still, the kind of stillness that doesn't feel peaceful, just deceptive. He carried one suitcase, light but weighty. Inside were 8 carefully folded fedoras. No blood, no tears, nothing loud, just silence dressed in felt. He didn't run. Running screamed guilt. Walking, said you belonged. At the train station, no questions waited, just a seat and a quiet train heading east. On board, Frankie sat upright, rigid. Every breath tested the boundaries of control. Every second was practice for the next. He replayed everything, words, looks, pauses between sentences. Not what he'd done, but how he'd wear the lie. Capone wouldn't believe facts. Capone wouldn't believe facts. Capone read tone. By the time the train shuddered into Chicago under the gray lift of early sun, Frankie was ready, or close enough to fool himself. No delays, no corridors. Straight to Cicero, straight to Capone. The man himself sat unmoved at a table not built for opinions. He didn't rise, didn't nod. Just watched Frankie walk in like a king testing a counterfeit coin. "Where are they?" Capone asked. Frankie set the case down slowly. His fingers betrayed him, one soft tremble. "They scattered," he said. "Lou lost it. Fired early. Bumpy vanished in the mess." Capone studied him with the quiet of a man who doesn't look for answers, only cracks. Frankie opened the suitcase. 8 hats. Capone leaned closer, picked one up, checked it. Crease, lining, weight. He knew fedoras like he knew backhanded compliments. "Clean," Capone said. "Yes," Frankie replied. He was waiting. Capone placed the hat down like it carried heat. He leaned back slowly. "So," he said, "either Bumpy's smarter than I gave him credit for, or someone wanted you all out of the way." Frankie kept his mouth closed. Let silence speak instead. It stretched long enough to feel like a free fall. Then, unexpectedly, Capone reached for a stack of cash and shoved it across the table. "For the trouble," he said, "and for being the only one who kept his head." Frankie's lungs loosened. Barely. Capone's eyes sharpened again. "But understand something. Men who walk out alone," Capone paused, "they don't usually do it twice." Frankie nodded, took the money with a hand that no longer pretended not to shake. He stood. He turned. And just as his fingers reached for the door, "Lose the hat," Capone said. Frankie froze. Capone smirked faintly. "That style doesn't suit survivors." Frankie walked into the chill of morning with cash, a clean face, and a heart that thudded too loud to be calm. His path was clear, but his footing uneasy. Later that day, he reached into his coat pocket without thinking. Nothing was there. The fedora Bumpy had handed him was gone. And for the first time, Frankie wondered if walking out that door with his life had cost more than dying ever would. The story didn't ripple like bullets usually do. There were no funerals, no crime scenes, just an absence so wide it made people whisper. 8 men left for Chicago. 7 disappeared. 1 returned with only hats in a case. That was enough to shift gravity. Capone's men noticed first. Meetings shortened. Routes detoured. Bravado drained out of rooms like gas from a leak. Even Lou Caruso's name was erased. No jokes, no curses. Just gone, like saying it out loud felt dangerous. In Harlem, it landed differently. No celebration. Bumpy didn't boast. No parades, no headlines, because he knew the power of not performing victory. Behavior changed. That was all. Quiet operators found room to breathe again. Numbers men edged back into daylight. They weren't louder, just smarter. Bumpy Johnson wasn't spoken of like a warlord anymore. He was spoken of like a force of nature, like rain, something you watched. Adjusted for. Never tested unless you wanted to drown. Even the myth started to shift. People stopped asking, "How did Bumpy survive?" They asked, "Why didn't Capone get anything back?" And no one liked any of the answers. Frankie Yale Jr. vanished into that quiet, just like Bumpy told him to. He paid the hospital first. The nurses stopped calling. Mary cried once, quietly, in the hallway. His daughter healed, slowly. Breathing steadied. Coloring came back. She smiled again. That smile nearly broke him. Frankie took smaller jobs after that. Clean work. Legitimate enough to lie about. The kind of work that didn't come with whispers or blood on the cuffs. No trains, no suitcases, no more hats. But nights? They didn't let him go. Every whistle in the dark reminded him of a door locking behind him. Every stranger in a fedora made his chest squeeze, just for a moment, like maybe the past had found him again. Because Frankie knew the truth no one else did. Chicago told itself. Bumpy outplayed Capone. Harlem joked, Capone blinked. But the real story? Both of them got what they wanted. Capone cleaned house. Bumpy sent a message without firing a shot in public. No gangs lost face. No headlines were written. The war got colder, quieter. And Frankie? Frankie became walking proof. But that made him a threat. A memory. A story with a face. The kind of story someone would eventually want erased. Which meant the aftermath wasn't an ending. It was a balance held tight by silence, and by him. Somewhere, between Chicago and Harlem, that cost kept shifting. Weightless, but deadly. Like a bill following a man who once cashed out early. Because violence doesn't forget. It doesn't stop because no one's talking. It stops when someone pays. Twice. Years passed. Hair grayed. Hands trembled, especially in the cold. Then one evening, Frankie stood inside a dusty pawn shop on Flatbush Avenue, staring at a mirror that was more honest than he was ready for. His reflection hunched back at him. Older. Smaller. Smaller. Eyes too tired to keep secrets anymore. The clerk slid a black fedora across the counter. "Good piece," he said. "Real throwback, old school." Frankie didn't reach for it. The crease. It was wrong. Not glaringly. Just enough. He saw it instantly. That's when he finally understood. What had been taken from him that night wasn't a simple thing. It wasn't money. He'd made that back. It wasn't safety. He hadn't felt safe since. Not sleep. He'd learned to sleep light. No. What Bumpy had taken wasn't anything Frankie could buy or rebuild. It was belonging. He no longer belonged to Chicago. He no longer belonged to Harlem. He didn't even belong to the version of himself who staggered out of that shop before dawn. Gangsters like Capone and Bumpy could wear symbols. They could brand silence like a signature and walk with myth on their shoulders. But Frankie? Survivors don't get to own symbols. They don't get closure. They just keep moving. Careful. Unseen. Hoping nobody ever recognizes the shadow trailing behind them. He turned away from the mirror, left the fedora on the glass, and walked out into a world that didn't look twice, which was the point. 8 men traveled into Chicago to kill a king. Only hats came back, and the one man who lived never wore one again. If you're still here, listening, wondering about what you're not supposed to know, then maybe you already understand what's coming. Because the next story, the one they really don't talk about, it's not about who won or who lost. It's about who stayed quiet too long. It starts where this story ends. And if you want it, well, you already know what that means. If you were in Frankie's place, 1 suitcase, 8 hats, and the weight of a choice, would you go back or disappear for good? Drop your answer in the comments. Let's see who walks and who stays. Some stories scream. This one only whispered. But the ones whispered in shadows, they're the ones that linger the longest. It wasn't the bullets, not the hats, not even the silence. It was the message underneath it all. You send 8 men to kill a king. But what if the kingdom was never where you thought it was? And the man who walked out, he didn't win. He just walked. Maybe that's what survival really means. If this story pulled you in, made you see loyalty, fear, and power in a whole new way, hit the like button to show it. And if you want to hear the next silent war they never put in the papers, subscribe, because the next name whispered in the dark might just be louder than gunfire.